Hello guys. Today we're going to make a quick look at a game called Darker, one of the most technically innovative games for MS-DOS, released in 1995 by Psygnosis to pretty much no fanfare at all, created by Jas Brook or Jason Brook, who was the programmer and designer of this game. It's a very obscure uh, flight simulation or like sci-fi flight combat title, uh, taking place in a vast city that you can navigate freely. You are given missions, but you can navigate the city freely, which in is part of a big part of the game is navigating the city in your craft here, known as the Cairo Fighter, which you fly around the city and mostly chase down bad guys known as the Halon, which you can which you track down and eventually blow up, which is more or less most of the missions in the game involve that. Uh, the big selling point here is the city and the environments, which are beautifully rendered in what is in some of the source code files, I think, referred to as the Avalon engine, but it's a custom game engine, a rendering engine, which produces these beautiful cityscapes, especially for 1995, with a very atmospheric vibe to it, where you can move around freely between the different, very distinct districts and very iconic landmark buildings. However, the game didn't sell very well, mostly because it's very obscure uh, and confusing. And it has the manual doesn't even tell you all of the controls. It tells you to experiment and see for yourself, which is not a good thing. Also, it doesn't list all the available weapons and so on. It lists empty boxes where you can eventually fill in the names of the weapons and how they work once you find them. Or, in other words, it expects you to figure a lot of things out on your own, which caused many people back in the day to give up on it. Today, a boxed copy of this game is therefore extremely expensive because it didn't sell very well. So it could cost anywhere between 200 and 300 US dollars to get a hold of a boxed copy of this game. Also, the obscureness continues throughout with like I said, the manual explains very little. It's also dependent on an interesting navigational aspect, meaning that you have no HUD showing the route to your next target. You have like an audio beep that gets stronger when you close into an enemy, and that's about it. Otherwise, you have to read the flavor text of the mission and then navigate this city by learning its layout and its landmarks so that you can navigate to your destination. And to do that, you have a paper map. This paper map is this one, uh, detailing the different places of the locations mentioned in the missions. That map is crucial for playing the game because that is your only help for navigating, apart from the two numbers that you see on the top left of the dash, which indicates your grid positions. And in this case, it's north-south grid 12, west-east grid 6, and then you use the map and your possible situational awareness to navigate. Needless to say, this caused a bit of confusion among players. Another thing causing confusion are the towers you see in the picture here with the white bulbs on top of them. You see, the craft works by powering itself from these towers, which is a very temporary power. You can see the power meter almost at the center of the dash here. Once that power reaches zero, you will start descending completely into the ground, meaning that it's basically a glider. So you have to boost yourself continuously by running close to the power tower, these towers to recharge all the time. And if you stray too far from the city or the beaten path where the towers are, then you're going to crash into the ground. This also comes into play in combat, where you need to keep yourself at constantly between these towers so that you don't run out of power. The towers will gain you power, and with power comes altitude, the ability to increase altitude, which is you can also use a turbo boost, known as the chase mode to to get to enemies, but that will um, drain your power even quicker. This is a rather confusing mechanic at first, also because the manual basically doesn't tell you about it. So you have to first of all figure out why you keep crashing into the ground and then you suddenly figure out how the towers work. And by reading some of the long background text in the manual, you can eventually conclude how the system actually works and that you need to recharge continuously. This your craft also only has one mode of power, which is this cruising speed, and the turbo boost. But there's no other, like everything. It's like a glider. It maneuvers like a glider between, and you recharge its lift, so to speak, by running close to these towers scattered out across the city. Now, the atmosphere, as you can see, is excellent, and the rendering is absolutely beautiful. However, it takes a hefty PC for the time to run it. This is a 486 DX4 100 megahertz, but you would need something like that or a Pentium class machine or something to really get the most out of it. Combat is fairly simple. You target your enemies and then you blast away at them until they blow up. Um, Speaking of blowing up, there's no such thing as scavenging or so on. It's pretty much straightforward. It helps to have a joystick because the combat becomes very difficult unless you do, because it's hard as it is to control the craft and keep it within like the borders of the towers. But the big selling point here is the big, sprawling open world city and the beautiful renderer. But the confusion may put you off. But I really think that you should try this game because it's a beautiful game and it's also been archived, so you can now play it without spending $300 on a boxed copy. So you should really try it because it is worth it, even if it is confusing.